Hello everyone, welcome back to the Life Lessons channel. Today, I want to start with a question that each of us has probably asked ourselves at least once in life: why are we here in this world? This is not just a simple question about finding the purpose of life, but also a profound spiritual journey that helps us reflect on the nature of life and our presence in this vast world. In Buddhist teachings, this question doesn't have a simple answer, but it holds deep truths that, if understood and applied, can transform the way we live and view the world. Buddhism teaches us not only about our existence in this world but also reveals that the ultimate purpose of life is spiritual growth, awakening, and liberation from suffering. You might be wondering, how can we know the right answer? Buddha teaches that life is a journey, a path where we learn, grow, and come to understand ourselves more deeply. Every moment in life is an opportunity to experience, to feel the impermanent nature of life, and to find the answer for ourselves. And when we realize this, we no longer get caught up in material concerns or external worries, but instead focus on developing our inner selves and finding inner peace. Imagine, if you could answer this question. How would your life change? You could live a life filled with meaning, no longer confused or anxious about things that don't matter, but instead focus on living true to your purpose, with compassion, wisdom, and peace. These are the values that Buddhism teaches us through lessons on mindfulness, impermanence, and wisdom, helping us realize that life is not just about existing, but about developing and awakening. So, why are we here in this world? To understand the answer, we need to look deeper into life, into ourselves, and into the invisible connections we have with the universe around us. To do that, we must practice the principles of Buddhism, live with compassion and wisdom, and continue to learn every day. If you found this story helpful, don't forget to leave a comment, share with your friends and family, and subscribe to the Life Lessons channel so you won't miss the next videos. Let's continue this journey of seeking truth and discovering valuable lessons from Buddhism to make our lives more meaningful every day. Life as a spiritual journey. A Buddhist perspective. In Buddhism, life is not seen as an accidental occurrence but as a purposeful journey, each life having a deeper meaning and reason for existence. Every being has a specific role to play in the grand cycle of life, and our time on earth is an opportunity to evolve spiritually. This journey, however, is not one of mere survival or fleeting pleasure, but of spiritual growth, learning, and enlightenment. Buddhism teaches us that our very existence is an integral part of the universal process. It's not a random event that we are born into this body, rather, it's part of a greater cosmic plan. We are born into this physical form with the chance to cultivate wisdom, develop compassion, and ultimately reach enlightenment. Our existence provides us with the opportunity to understand the true nature of reality and our place within it. The impermanence of life. One of the core teachings of Buddhism is the concept of impermanence, or anicca. Everything in life is subject to change, and nothing lasts forever. This applies not only to the material world but also to our experiences, emotions, and even our physical bodies. The very nature of life is transitory. And it is through this impermanence that we come to understand the true essence of existence. Each moment we live is a step on our spiritual path. Each experience, whether joyous or painful, is a valuable lesson that contributes to our personal growth. From the Buddhist perspective, nothing is permanent, and therefore, we are called to be mindful of the present moment. This realization helps us develop a deeper understanding of the nature of suffering and joy, and guides us toward cultivating wisdom in the face of life's impermanence. The role of suffering in spiritual development. Another fundamental teaching in Buddhism is the understanding of suffering, or dukkha. Suffering is not something to be avoided, but something to be embraced as part of the human experience. In fact, it is through suffering that we often learn the most profound lessons. Buddha's path to enlightenment was shaped by his experiences of suffering. And it is through the recognition of suffering that we can begin to break free from the cycle of attachment and desire that keeps us trapped in samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Suffering arises from our attachments, to people, things, and even to our own identities. These attachments create desire, and when our desires go unfulfilled, suffering follows. By observing and understanding our suffering, we learn that it is not the external world that causes pain, but our attachment to it. As we detach from these illusions and attachments, we begin to find peace. This process of letting go is a key aspect of the spiritual journey in Buddhism. Through mindfulness and meditation, Buddhists learn to observe their thoughts and emotions without attachment. This practice leads to greater insight into the nature of suffering and provides the tools to alleviate it. The more we are able to detach from our cravings and desires, the more we develop the mental clarity needed to walk the path toward enlightenment. The interconnection of all beings. One of the most profound teachings in Buddhism is the idea of interconnectedness. In the Buddhist worldview, all beings are interconnected and interdependent. Nothing exists in isolation. We are not separate from the world or from others, but part of a vast, interconnected web of existence. Our lives are not simply about personal gain or individual success. Instead, life is about understanding our connection to others, cultivating compassion, and contributing to the welfare of all sentient beings. The Buddha's teachings encourage us to develop loving-kindness, metta, compassion, karuna, and equanimity, upekkha. Recognizing that the happiness and suffering of others are deeply intertwined with our own. By practicing these virtues, we begin to see that our journey is not just about our own spiritual progress but about the well-being of others as well. As we grow in wisdom and compassion, we become more aware of the needs and suffering of those around us, and this awareness propels us to act with kindness and care toward all living beings. The path to enlightenment. In Buddhism, the ultimate goal of the spiritual journey is to reach enlightenment, or nirvana. It is the end of suffering, the cessation of desire and attachment, and the liberation from the cycle of rebirth. The Buddha taught the Noble Eightfold Path as a practical guide to reaching enlightenment. This path is divided into 8 practices that lead to the cessation of suffering and the realization of wisdom. Right understanding, samadhi, understanding the 4 noble truths and the impermanent, interconnected nature of life. Right intention, samma sankappa, cultivating intentions rooted in love. Compassion, and non-harm. Right speech, samavaka, speaking truthfully, kindly, and with mindfulness. Right action, sammakamanta, acting with integrity and avoiding harm to others. Right livelihood, samma ajiva, earning a living in a way that does not cause harm to others. Right effort, samma vayama, making the effort to cultivate positive qualities and eliminate negative tendencies. Right mindfulness, samma sati, practicing awareness of the body, feelings, thoughts, and mental states. Right concentration, samma samadhi, developing deep concentration through meditation to see the true nature of reality. By following this path, we gradually shed the layers of ignorance, attachment, and suffering that bind us. Through mindfulness, meditation, ethical conduct, and wisdom, we can progress toward the ultimate realization of nirvana. The purpose of life is spiritual growth. Buddhism teaches that life is not simply about surviving or seeking pleasure. It is a spiritual journey, an opportunity to grow and evolve toward wisdom, compassion, and enlightenment. Every challenge, every joy and sorrow, every moment of our lives is part of a larger process that shapes our spiritual development. The purpose of our existence is to understand ourselves, to recognize the impermanence of life, to let go of attachments, and to cultivate compassion for all beings. By embracing the teachings of Buddhism and walking the path of wisdom, we can transcend suffering and reach a state of peace and understanding. Life, in the Buddhist view, is a journey toward the ultimate goal. Awakening to the truth of our existence and the interconnectedness of all things. Impermanence and the transitory nature of life, a Buddhist perspective. In Buddhism, one of the most fundamental concepts is impermanence, or anicca. This teaching emphasizes that everything in life is in a constant state of flux and that nothing remains unchanged forever. Nothing is permanent, and everything is subject to the cycle of birth, growth, decay, and death. This is true for all things, material objects, emotions, thoughts, and even our own physical bodies. The understanding of impermanence is crucial for leading a life of wisdom and peace. Impermanence teaches us that all experiences, whether joyful or painful, are temporary. This realization can be both liberating and sobering. On one hand, it allows us to recognize that difficult moments in life will eventually pass, giving us the strength to endure. On the other hand, it reminds us that the pleasurable moments we often chase after will also fade away, urging us not to become attached to them. The opportunity in our impermanence. The Buddhist perspective on impermanence is not simply about acknowledging that life is fleeting. It is about understanding that our brief time in this world is an opportunity to cultivate spiritual wisdom, practice compassion, and realize the truth of our existence. Every moment in our lives is an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to evolve spiritually. Buddha's teachings encourage us to live mindfully, to fully embrace the present moment, and to cultivate an attitude of gratitude for the time we have. By understanding the transient nature of our existence, we can begin to appreciate the present more deeply. Focusing on living with intention rather than being distracted by fleeting desires. One of the main goals of Buddhist practice is to transform our awareness of impermanence into a tool for spiritual development. Knowing that life is temporary, we are encouraged to make the most of the time we have. Instead of wasting our energy on the pursuit of material wealth, fame, or superficial achievements. Buddhism calls us to focus on the cultivation of inner peace, wisdom, and compassion, values that last beyond this lifetime. The illusion of permanence. One of the reasons people struggle with the concept of impermanence is because we tend to create an illusion of permanence in our minds. We become attached to people, places, possessions, and even ideas, believing that they are permanent and unchanging. However, this attachment to permanence is a source of suffering. The Buddha taught that attachment is one of the causes of dukkha, suffering, as we constantly try to hold on to things that are naturally fleeting. When we believe that something is permanent, we cling to it. This attachment causes us to resist change and experience anxiety when things inevitably shift. This is true for our relationships, our careers, our physical health, and even our sense of self. Buddhism urges us to recognize the impermanence of all things, including ourselves, and to release our attachments. In doing so, we free ourselves from the suffering that arises when the world inevitably changes. Living meaningfully in the face of impermanence. The realization of impermanence encourages us to live more meaningfully. Since nothing is permanent, every moment becomes precious. This awareness motivates us to live more fully, to cherish the present, and to focus on what truly matters. Instead of postponing our dreams or waiting for the perfect moment. Buddhism teaches us to act with purpose and to cultivate peace and happiness right now. Buddha's teachings stress the importance of developing a heart of compassion and kindness in our interactions with others. Since we all experience suffering and face impermanence, showing love, understanding, and empathy can help alleviate the pain of others. By doing so, we create a life that not only nurtures our own spiritual growth but also helps to uplift those around us. Furthermore, impermanence encourages us to live without attachment to outcomes. When we let go of expectations and embrace life as it is, we can experience greater peace of mind. The practice of mindfulness helps us stay present, acknowledging the impermanence of thoughts, emotions, and experiences as they come and go without clinging to them. In this way, we cultivate a deep sense of equanimity that allows us to face life's challenges with a calm and open heart. Impermanence as a catalyst for enlightenment. In Buddhism, understanding and accepting impermanence is seen as a crucial step on the path to enlightenment. The Buddha taught that the realization of impermanence can help us overcome the three poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion. These three poisons are the root causes of suffering and are perpetuated by our attachment to permanence. By recognizing the fleeting nature of all things, we begin to see through the illusions that bind us. We stop chasing after things that cannot provide lasting happiness and instead turn inward to develop wisdom, compassion, and mindfulness. The more we understand that all things are impermanent, the more we can let go of our desires and attachments. This leads to freedom from suffering and brings us closer to the ultimate goal of nirvana. Enlightenment, in the Buddhist sense, is the complete realization of the true nature of existence. It is the cessation of suffering, the ending of attachment, and the liberation from the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. By embracing impermanence, we gain the wisdom to see the world as it truly is, free from the illusions that cause us to suffer. Living with the awareness of impermanence. Ultimately, the awareness of impermanence is not meant to be a source of fear or despair. Instead, it is a reminder to live with intention, to appreciate every moment, and to align our lives with what is truly important. Through mindfulness, meditation, and ethical living, we can cultivate a life that is rich in meaning and full of compassion. Buddhism teaches us that impermanence is not something to be avoided but something to be embraced. By accepting that everything changes, we can free ourselves from attachment and the suffering that it causes. In doing so, we can live with greater peace, wisdom, and compassion, and ultimately achieve the highest goal of spiritual liberation. In this way, impermanence becomes a powerful tool for transformation. It reminds us that our time in this life is limited and precious, and it encourages us to make the most of it by living a life that reflects our deepest values. By recognizing the temporary nature of our existence, we are empowered to live more fully, to grow spiritually, and to awaken to the truth of our interconnectedness with all things. Learning from suffering to overcome suffering, a Buddhist perspective. Suffering, or dukkha, is an inherent part of human existence. The Buddha's teachings emphasize that suffering is not something to be feared or avoided, but rather something that offers us valuable opportunities to learn and grow. In Buddhism, suffering is seen as an inevitable aspect of life, but it is also a powerful catalyst for spiritual development. By understanding the nature of suffering, we can transform it into a means of liberation and enlightenment. The Buddha taught that suffering arises due to attachment, desire, and ignorance, and it manifests in many forms: physical pain, emotional distress, loss, disappointment, and even existential dissatisfaction. This suffering is not random or meaningless, it is deeply connected to the way we live our lives and how we perceive the world around us. The Buddha's path to liberation involves understanding the causes of suffering and learning how to transcend them. The nature of suffering in Buddhism. According to Buddhist teachings, suffering arises from the three poisons: greed, hatred, and ignorance. These mental afflictions distort our perceptions and lead to attachment, aversion, and delusion. We attach ourselves to things that are impermanent, leading to disappointment and suffering when they inevitably change or disappear. We also develop aversions to situations or experiences we find unpleasant, which leads to further suffering when we are unable to avoid them. Lastly, ignorance prevents us from understanding the true nature of reality, leaving us trapped in the cycle of suffering. In Buddhism, suffering is not seen as something to escape, but something to understand. The Buddha's teaching on the Four Noble Truths explains the nature of suffering, its causes, the possibility of overcoming it, and the path to liberation. The first noble truth, dukkha, acknowledges that suffering is a universal experience. The second noble truth, samadaya, teaches that suffering arises from craving, attachment, and ignorance. The third noble truth, nirodha, reveals that the cessation of suffering is possible by letting go of these attachments. Finally, the fourth noble truth, magga, outlines the path to freedom from suffering, the Noble Eightfold Path. Transforming suffering into wisdom. Buddhism teaches that suffering, rather than being something to avoid, can be a powerful teacher. When we experience pain, loss, or hardship, it presents an opportunity for us to confront our attachments, fears, and delusions. Suffering can help us become more aware of our desires and attachments and show us how they cause us to suffer. This awareness is the first step toward liberation. Through mindfulness and meditation, we can learn to observe our suffering without becoming overwhelmed by it. By practicing equanimity, we learn to accept the impermanent nature of all things, including our pain. This acceptance does not mean passively enduring suffering, but rather embracing it as a part of the process of growth and transformation. When we stop resisting suffering and allow ourselves to feel it fully, we can begin to understand it in a deeper way. This understanding enables us to release our attachments and open ourselves to greater peace. Suffering also teaches us the importance of compassion. When we experience pain, we develop empathy for others who are going through similar struggles. This shared experience of suffering connects us to others, and through this connection, we cultivate compassion and loving kindness. Buddhism encourages us to use our own suffering as a source of compassion for others, recognizing that we are all interconnected in our shared experience of dukkha. Letting go, the key to overcoming suffering. A central practice in Buddhism is the art of letting go. Suffering arises when we cling to things, whether they are material possessions, relationships, or even our own identities. The more tightly we hold on to these things, the more we suffer when they change or are lost. The Buddhist teachings emphasize that true liberation comes from letting go of attachment and embracing impermanence. Letting go does not mean renouncing the world or avoiding relationships. Rather, it means cultivating a healthy relationship with the world and with others, free from attachment and expectation. When we release our attachments, we free ourselves from the cycle of craving and aversion that causes suffering. We begin to see the world more clearly, without the distortion of our desires and fears. Forgiveness is also an essential part of letting go. Holding on to anger, resentment, and grudges only causes us more suffering. Forgiveness, according to Buddhist teachings, is not just for the benefit of others, but for our own peace of mind. When we forgive, we release ourselves from the burden of hatred and resentment, allowing our hearts to heal and our minds to become free. Embracing suffering with mindfulness. Mindfulness is a powerful tool for learning from suffering and transforming it. By practicing mindfulness, we can observe our suffering without getting caught up in it. Instead of reacting impulsively to our pain, we can approach it with awareness, allowing ourselves to fully experience it without judgment or resistance. This mindful awareness helps us to understand the nature of suffering and develop the wisdom necessary to overcome it. In moments of suffering, mindfulness helps us to stay grounded in the present moment. Often, we suffer not because of the pain itself, but because of our thoughts and stories about the pain. We may become consumed by worry about the future or regret about the past, creating additional layers of suffering. Mindfulness allows us to stay present with our pain, recognizing that it is only temporary and that we do not need to cling to it or resist it. Through mindfulness, we also develop acceptance. Acceptance does not mean resignation, but rather the ability to acknowledge and embrace our experiences as they are, without judgment. When we accept suffering as a natural part of life, we no longer see it as something to avoid or fear. Instead, we can approach it with equanimity and inner peace, knowing that it will pass in due time. The path to liberation through suffering. Ultimately, the goal of Buddhism is to transcend suffering and achieve liberation or nirvana. While suffering is an inevitable part of life, it is not the end of the story. The Buddha's teachings show us that through wisdom, mindfulness, compassion, and letting go, we can transcend suffering and achieve a state of freedom and peace. By understanding the nature of suffering and using it as a tool for growth, we can move beyond it and attain true liberation. In the process of overcoming suffering, we also awaken to the interconnectedness of all beings. The more we recognize the shared nature of suffering, the more we are motivated to alleviate the suffering of others. This sense of interconnectedness fosters compassion and loving kindness, qualities that are essential for a peaceful and harmonious world. By learning from suffering, we do not simply escape from it, but we transform it into a path toward wisdom, peace, and enlightenment. Suffering, when understood and embraced with awareness, becomes a source of growth and liberation, leading us to a life of greater peace, freedom, and spiritual fulfillment. Thus, the Buddha's teachings offer us a profound understanding of suffering and provide us with the tools to transcend it. Through mindfulness, compassion, and letting go of attachments, we can transform our suffering into wisdom, and in doing so, we can experience the true freedom of liberation. Understanding our connection with everything around us, a Buddhist perspective. One of the most profound teachings of Buddhism is the interconnectedness of all beings and things. The Buddha's wisdom reveals that nothing exists in isolation, everything is connected through a complex web of causes and conditions. Our presence in this world, therefore, is not a mere accident, but an opportunity to understand and cultivate deep relationships with others, nature, and the universe. These relationships serve as a path to spiritual growth, self-awareness, and ultimately, enlightenment. Interconnectedness, the fundamental Buddhist view. In Buddhism, the principle of interconnectedness is often referred to as pratitya samutpada or dependent origination. This teaching holds that all phenomena arise in dependence upon other phenomena, and nothing exists independently. This applies to all beings, human, animal, plant, and even inanimate objects. Each being, each element, and each action is interdependent, forming a vast network of relationships that shapes the world as we know it. This interdependence means that we are not separate from others or the world around us. Our actions, thoughts, and feelings have a ripple effect on the universe. When we cultivate positive relationships with others and the environment, we contribute to the overall harmony and balance of the world. Conversely, negative actions and thoughts create disharmony and suffering, not only for ourselves but for those around us as well. The Buddha taught that through understanding and realizing our interconnectedness with all beings, we begin to see the world not as an isolated collection of individuals but as a unified whole. This realization is the foundation of metta, loving kindness, karuna, compassion, and mudita, empathetic joy, the core qualities of a peaceful and enlightened mind. Relationships with others. The path to growth and wisdom. One of the most profound lessons Buddhism teaches is that our relationships with others are crucial to our spiritual development. Family, friends, colleagues, and even strangers, all play an essential role in shaping who we are and how we relate to the world. These relationships are not just incidental. They are integral to our personal growth and spiritual evolution. Buddhism emphasizes the importance of cultivating loving kindness and compassion in our interactions. By living with metta, we create an atmosphere of warmth and goodwill that nurtures those around us. Loving kindness is not limited to our close relationships but extends to all beings, without exception. This unconditional love helps dissolve the boundaries that separate us from others, allowing us to experience the deep bond we share with everyone we encounter. Compassion, or karuna, is equally important. The Buddha teaches us that to live with compassion means to be moved by the suffering of others and to take action to alleviate that suffering. Compassion requires not only empathy but also a willingness to offer our time, energy, and resources to help others. It is through compassionate action that we truly embody the teachings of the Buddha and make a meaningful impact on the lives of others. Furthermore, Buddhism encourages us to cultivate mudita, or empathetic joy. Instead of feeling jealousy or resentment towards other successes, we are encouraged to celebrate and rejoice in the happiness and achievements of others. This practice of sympathetic joy helps to break down feelings of isolation and competition, fostering a sense of unity and connection with the world around us. By practicing these qualities in our relationships, we not only contribute to the well-being of others but also deepen our understanding of ourselves. Relationships provide us with opportunities to learn patience, humility, forgiveness, and gratitude, qualities essential to spiritual growth. Through our interactions with others, we are constantly reminded of our interconnectedness and our responsibility to contribute to the collective good. The natural world. A sacred connection. Buddhism teaches that our relationship with the natural world is equally important. The earth, the trees, the rivers, the mountains, and all the creatures that inhabit it are not separate from us but part of the same interdependent web of existence. Our actions towards the environment are an extension of our mindfulness and compassion, and how we treat the world around us directly impacts our spiritual health. The Buddha often spoke of nature as a reflection of the mind. Just as a clear, peaceful mind sees the world clearly, a harmonious environment is a reflection of our collective inner peace. The natural world offers us an opportunity to practice mindfulness and appreciation for the present moment. When we spend time in nature, we reconnect with the essence of life, experiencing the beauty and impermanence of all things. Caring for the environment is an expression of our respect for all life. Buddhism teaches that everything has inherent value, and the destruction of nature is a form of harm to both the planet and all living beings. By cultivating a relationship of respect and stewardship with the environment, we deepen our understanding of ahimsa, non-harm, and santosa, contentment. We are reminded that we are not separate from nature but a part of it, and our well-being is intimately linked to the well-being of the earth. The universe, a vast, unfathomable connection. At the deepest level, Buddhism teaches that we are connected to the entire universe. This connection transcends time and space, reaching into the very fabric of existence. The Buddha's teachings point to the realization that everything in the universe is a manifestation of the same underlying reality. The material world, our minds, and the infinite cosmos are all interconnected, and our actions resonate throughout the entire universe. Meditation is one of the most powerful practices to experience this vast connection. Through deep meditation, we can expand our awareness beyond the boundaries of the self and connect with the larger universe. In this state, we transcend the illusion of separateness and experience oneness with all that exists. This realization is often referred to as nirvana, the liberation from the cycle of suffering and the direct experience of ultimate truth. The universe, in Buddhist terms, is not just a physical space. It is imbued with Dhamma, the universal law of truth and righteousness. By aligning ourselves with this law, we harmonize our personal will with the greater cosmic will. When we live in accordance with the natural laws of the universe, we experience peace, freedom, and a deep sense of purpose. Cultivating a life of connection. To live with awareness of our interconnectedness is to live a life of mindfulness and compassion. It is about recognizing that our actions, thoughts, and intentions affect everything around us. Each moment, we have the opportunity to create positive change in the world, not just for ourselves but for all beings. Buddhism encourages us to live consciously, with deep awareness of the preciousness of each moment and the impact of our actions. The practice of mindfulness in daily life is a way to stay connected to our true nature and to the world around us. Whether it is through our relationships with others, our connection to nature, or our understanding of the universe, we are constantly reminded of the profound interdependence that sustains all life. By cultivating loving-kindness, compassion, and mindfulness in every aspect of our lives, we not only enhance our own spiritual development but contribute to the well-being of the world. We recognize that every being, every moment, and every breath is an opportunity to deepen our connection with the world, the universe, and the truth of our existence. Through this practice, we realize that we are not separate from the world around us, but an integral part of it, each of us playing a vital role in the grand, interconnected dance of life. The purpose of life is to attain enlightenment, a Buddhist perspective. In Buddhism, The ultimate purpose of life is the attainment of nirvana, the profound state of enlightenment that transcends suffering and the cycle of rebirth. Enlightenment is not merely a conceptual understanding of the world, but a direct experience of the true nature of reality. It involves a deep awakening to the impermanent, interconnected, and empty nature of all phenomena. Through the practice of mindfulness, meditation, and ethical conduct, Buddhism teaches us that each life is an opportunity to walk the path of liberation and wisdom, ultimately leading us to a state of profound peace and understanding. Understanding enlightenment. Enlightenment, or Bodhi, in Buddhism is the realization of the ultimate truth of existence. It is the awakening from the illusion of self, the breaking free from the chains of ignorance, and the liberation from the cycle of suffering and rebirth, samsara. It is often described as a state of profound wisdom, compassion, and peace, where one fully understands the nature of reality and acts in accordance with this understanding. In Buddhist teachings, we learn that all beings are trapped in the cycle of samsara, which is characterized by birth, suffering, death, and rebirth. This cycle is driven by ignorance, craving, and attachment, leading to endless suffering. Enlightenment marks the cessation of this cycle, as one has seen through the illusion of the self and recognized the impermanent and interdependent nature of all things. Enlightenment is not something that can be acquired externally or through intellectual knowledge alone. It is a direct, experiential realization of the nature of the mind and the world. The Buddha himself attained enlightenment through meditation and deep insight into the nature of suffering and the causes of suffering. His teachings offer a path for others to follow, providing a way to break free from suffering and attain the same liberation. The path to enlightenment. The Noble Eightfold Path. The Buddha outlined a path to enlightenment known as the Noble Eightfold Path. This path consists of 8 practices that, when followed with mindfulness and diligence, lead to the cessation of suffering and the attainment of enlightenment. The Eightfold Path is divided into 3 key areas: wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. Right view. This is the understanding of the 4 noble truths, which explain the nature of suffering and the path to its cessation. Right view involves seeing the world as it truly is, impermanent, interconnected, and empty of inherent existence. Right intention. Right intention is the cultivation of thoughts and motivations that are aligned with the path to enlightenment. This includes the intention of renunciation, letting go of attachment, the intention of goodwill, compassion, and the intention of harmlessness, nonviolence. Right speech. This practice involves speaking truthfully, kindly, and helpfully, avoiding speech that is harsh, divisive, or deceptive. Right speech cultivates harmony in relationships and creates a peaceful environment conducive to spiritual growth. Right action. Right action involves ethical behavior, such as refraining from killing, stealing, or engaging in sexual misconduct. It is the cultivation of moral conduct that reflects compassion and respect for all living beings. Right livelihood. Right livelihood encourages individuals to engage in occupations that do not cause harm to others or the environment. It involves earning a living in a way that is consistent with ethical principles and does not contribute to suffering. Right effort. Right effort is the diligent cultivation of wholesome qualities and the abandonment of unwholesome ones. It requires consistent effort to develop the mind and to overcome negative emotions and tendencies. Right mindfulness. Right mindfulness is the practice of being fully present and aware in each moment. It involves cultivating mindfulness of the body, feelings, mind, and mental objects, and recognizing the impermanent nature of all experiences. Right concentration. Right concentration is the cultivation of deep states of meditation, known as jhana. It involves training the mind to focus deeply and single-pointedly, leading to profound insight and mental clarity. The Eightfold Path is not a linear progression but a holistic approach to life. Each of these practices supports and enhances the others. By following this path, one gradually purifies the mind, overcomes suffering, and develops the wisdom necessary to attain enlightenment. Mindfulness and meditation, the tools for awakening. Central to the Buddhist path to enlightenment is the practice of mindfulness and meditation. Through these practices, we cultivate awareness of our thoughts, emotions, and actions, allowing us to gain insight into the impermanent and interconnected nature of all things. Mindfulness, sati, involves paying attention to the present moment with an attitude of openness and acceptance. It is the practice of observing thoughts, feelings, and sensations without attachment or aversion. By cultivating mindfulness, we begin to see the impermanence of all phenomena, and the nature of suffering as it arises and passes away. This understanding is key to breaking the cycle of craving and attachment that leads to suffering. Meditation, dhyana, is another essential practice on the path to enlightenment. Through meditation, we train the mind to become focused and clear, allowing us to gain deep insight into the nature of reality. Buddhist meditation techniques, such as vipassana, insight meditation, and samatha, calm abiding meditation, are used to develop concentration, mental clarity, and wisdom. In meditation, we observe the mind as it experiences various thoughts, emotions, and sensations. We learn to let go of attachments and aversions, and we come to see that all phenomena are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and lacking inherent existence. Through this direct experience, we gain the wisdom needed to transcend suffering and move closer to enlightenment. Ethical conduct. Living with compassion and wisdom. Buddhism emphasizes the importance of ethical conduct as a foundation for spiritual growth. Living in harmony with the ethical precepts supports the cultivation of a peaceful and harmonious mind, which is essential for the attainment of enlightenment. The 5 precepts, which form the basic ethical guidelines for lay practitioners, encourage individuals to refrain from killing, stealing, lying, engaging in sexual misconduct, and consuming intoxicants. These precepts are not moral rules but practical guidelines for living in a way that minimizes harm to oneself and others. As one develops ethical conduct, the mind becomes purer, more stable, and more conducive to meditation and insight. Compassion, karuna, and loving kindness, metta, are cultivated through ethical actions, and these qualities are essential for attaining enlightenment. By living ethically, we create the conditions for spiritual growth and develop the wisdom and compassion necessary for liberation. The final goal: nirvana and liberation from suffering. The ultimate goal of Buddhism is nirvana, the cessation of suffering and the end of the cycle of rebirth. Nirvana is not a place or a state of existence, but rather the realization of the true nature of reality, one that is free from attachment, craving, and ignorance. In nirvana, one experiences perfect peace, freedom from suffering, and an unshakable understanding of the interconnectedness of all beings. The Buddha taught that nirvana is attainable in this lifetime through diligent practice and mindfulness. It is the ultimate goal of all Buddhist practice and represents the liberation of the mind from the illusions that bind it. Enlightenment is not an abstract ideal, but a real and attainable experience. Through the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path, mindfulness, meditation, and ethical conduct, we can gradually remove the obstacles that prevent us from seeing the truth of our existence and the world around us. With each step along the path, we move closer to liberation, until we reach the ultimate state of peace, wisdom, and compassion. The purpose of life, according to Buddhism, is to attain enlightenment, an awakening to the true nature of reality. Through the practice of mindfulness, meditation, and ethical living, we can break free from suffering and attain a state of profound peace and understanding. The path to enlightenment is not easy, but it is the most noble pursuit one can undertake in life. By following the teachings of the Buddha and living in accordance with the Noble Eightfold Path, we can find liberation from suffering and achieve the ultimate goal of enlightenment. Conclusion: the purpose of our existence according to Buddhism. So, why are we here in this life? The answer lies within the very journey of our existence. We are here to learn, to grow, to connect, and ultimately to attain enlightenment. Each challenge, every moment of happiness or suffering, holds a unique significance in helping us refine ourselves and move closer to inner peace. Buddhism teaches us that life is not merely about surviving, but about realizing that our existence is a precious gift. Each moment we experience, whether it brings joy or hardship, is an opportunity to practice mindfulness, to cultivate compassion, and to develop wisdom. Our presence in this world is not accidental, it is part of a greater, interconnected journey, where every experience shapes us, molds us, and brings us closer to the ultimate truth. The core of Buddhist philosophy emphasizes the impermanence of all things. Everything changes, including our thoughts, emotions, and the circumstances around us. This impermanence reminds us not to become attached to fleeting pleasures or material pursuits. Instead, it encourages us to live with a deeper awareness of the present moment and to embrace the teachings that guide us toward spiritual awakening. The purpose of our existence is not just to experience life, but to deeply understand it and evolve along the path of enlightenment. As we navigate through life, we face many trials, and often, these moments of difficulty are where we find the most opportunity for growth. Suffering, a central aspect of the human experience, is not to be feared or avoided. In fact, Buddhism teaches us that suffering is an essential part of the path to enlightenment. By confronting suffering with mindfulness, compassion, and the right understanding, we can transform it into a profound learning experience that deepens our wisdom. Our struggles are not signs of failure, but rather moments that encourage us to dig deeper, to practice patience, and to cultivate inner peace. The Buddha's teachings show us that we can use each hardship as a stepping stone to greater wisdom and liberation from the cycles of craving, attachment, and ignorance that bind us to suffering. In the same way, moments of happiness and success provide us with the opportunity to practice gratitude and contentment. These joyful experiences help remind us of the interconnectedness of all beings and the importance of living in harmony with others. They allow us to reflect on the impermanence of all things, encouraging us to embrace each moment fully and with awareness. Buddhism also stresses the importance of relationships. We are all interconnected, and the way we interact with others, whether through acts of kindness, understanding, or love, shapes our journey and contributes to our enlightenment. The Buddha's teachings guide us to live with compassion, to see others not as separate from us, but as part of the same web of existence. When we treat others with respect and kindness, we cultivate a peaceful and harmonious environment that supports our own spiritual growth. Ultimately, the purpose of our life is to awaken to the truth of who we really are, to the nature of reality, and to the ultimate freedom that comes from understanding the impermanent nature of all things. Through the practice of mindfulness, meditation, and ethical conduct, we come to see clearly, with wisdom and compassion, the true nature of the self and the world around us. By dedicating ourselves to the path of enlightenment, we move closer to the state of nirvana, which is the liberation from suffering and the attainment of peace. This peace is not external, but arises from within, a deep inner tranquility that is not shaken by the ups and downs of life. As we continue our journey, we must remember to honor every moment, to embrace each lesson, and to live with mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom. The path to enlightenment is not easy, but it is worth walking, for it leads us to the ultimate truth and liberation from suffering. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Life Lessons channel to stay connected and receive more videos on life and Buddhist philosophy. May you continue on your journey of self-discovery and enlightenment.